Hello to all and welcome back to Should You Get. I'm Brother Templar and welcome to patch 1.61, also known as Road to Glory. Now for this patch, I've already got my hands on the KI-100, and for you people who saw my subscriber special, well, you sort of already knew this. But either way, let's have a look at the KI-100 because this is quite an interesting aircraft actually. For its 3.0 battle rating, it's a tier 2, and yet it, I think, has a bit more to it. But we'll get more onto that later, after we go over the history of the aircraft and what made it what it was. By mid-1944, the KI-61 was one of the best fighters of the Japanese Air Force. It was the only production Japanese fighter to have an inline power plant, as well as the first one with factory-installed armour and self-sealing fuel tanks. Not to mention, it also had a respectable performance when in comparison to American and European designs of the time. You see, the design was based around speed and rate of climb rather than manoeuvrability and range. Because of this, it was an effective design, but from engine shortages and reliability problems, it was by no means perfect. The main reason for these engine shortages and reliability problems was mainly due to, as the war went on, the quality of engine design went downhill, unfortunately, as more and more engines were needed to put into the war effort, and there was less and less factories to do it. It got to the point where a lot of companies were making engines in order to keep up with the level required, to very poor quality standards, meaning that a lot of them had to be rejected due to such poor quality. It was because of this that a lot of them were thrown out, and for the few that got through weren't the most reliable. Now, despite the fact that the KI-61 was a very effective aircraft, it wasn't long before it started fighting aircraft that were, well, better than itself, this being aircraft like the F-6F Hellcat. Now, because of this advantage, it led to the development of an improved model, the KI-61II, or later known as the KI-61II Kai. This new variant had a 1,500 horsepower Kawasaki HA-140 engine, which although was heavier than the original version, it was a lot more powerful. Due to the already mentioned problems with engine manufacturing at this time, the aircraft was never capable of performing as it was planned. The amount of engines that were produced was far fewer than that was required. It was at this time that the Japanese Air Force was in desperate need of an effective interceptor to stop the Allied bombing raids over the Japanese mainland. So, in October 1944, it was ordered that a 1,500 horsepower, 14-cylinder, 2-row radial engine should be installed into the KI-61 airframes. This engine was known as the Mitsubishi HA-112II. The HA-112 engine was some 54 kilograms lighter than its predecessor, the HA-140. Not to mention, it produced the same amount of power as its predecessor, and yet was more reliable. It was at this time that the old KI-61 fuselage went through a few tweaks and improvements in order to maximise the efficiency and effectiveness of the new engine. Some of these changes being arguably more important than others, such as changing the fuselage so the engine will actually fit inside the aircraft, but also some more subtle changes, like changing the skin fairing of the fuselage to smooth out the airflow behind the adjustable cooling flaps and multiple exhaust stubs for the new engine cowling. These modifications continued on the aircraft until, on the 1st of February 1945, the new model was flown for the first time. This new model didn't need the heavy coolant radiator and other fittings that were required for a liquid-cooled engine. Not only this, but this new design was lighter than the KI-61II, which of course helped wing loadings and had a positive effect on the flight characteristics. This new design gained the company name KI-101 Co. Now, every KI-100 airframe was remanufactured from the KI-61II and III airframes, meaning that there was not a single airframe designed specifically for the KI-100. During the test flights of the KI-100, the general staff and flight crews were amazed by the flight characteristics. It surpassed the KI-61 in everything except for maximum speed that was actually around 18 miles an hour slower. This is mainly due to the larger area of the radial engines and the front cowling. But regardless of this, the model was ordered to be put into production as the Go-Shikizen, or as it roughly translates into, the 5-type fighter, also known as the Army Fighter Type 5. The KI-100 made its first combat debut on the night of the 9th of March 1945. From this point on, it was used pretty much throughout the entire war, often being said that in a fight between a Ki-84 and a Ki-100, if both pilots were of equal skill, the Ki-100 would often win, placing it as one of, if not the, best fighter of its time. But regardless of this, the Ki-100 continued to fly and losses were being made. As long as the bombing runs continued to go on, there was less and less aircraft being produced until eventually production was halted altogether. The last loss of the KI-100 occurred on the 14th of August 1945, the day before Japan surrendered. So, on to the KI-100 in War Thunder, and indeed this is an interesting aircraft. You see, the thing is with this aircraft is that first of all, its battle rating is very strange, as is the tree that it's in. In order to unlock the Ki-100, you have to get the Ki-61I variants before it, which is very strange considering the Ki-100 is based off the Ki-61-2 variants, not the ones. So I don't understand why it is that you have to unlock the wrong tree to get it off the thing it was based off, so that's a bit strange. Not to mention, speaking of strange things, its battle rating is only a 3.0, which, if you have a look at its stats, is very debatable if you ask me. Now, if you look at the aircraft performance, you'll notice that it's nothing very special. For a 3.0 battle rating aircraft, when aced, 360 miles an hour is decent. It's nothing really special, and is fairly average for a Tier 2 Japanese fighter. However, its turn time is actually quite slow, at only 20 seconds, which is actually one of the slowest turning fighters in the Japanese Tier 2 line, and it also doesn't have a very impressive rate of climb. When aced at 13.8 meters per second, it is decent and will beat most zeros to altitude, but when it comes to aircraft like the Ki-43s or Ki-61s, you probably aren't going to be beating them. So, the overall flight performance of the aircraft is, well, fairly average for a 3.0 battle rating aircraft. So why is it that I see this aircraft as, well, quite debatable at a 3.0 battle rating? And it quite simply all comes down to its armament. You see, for two 20mm and two 50 caliber guns, it is quite well armed for a 3.0 battle rating aircraft, and it greatly helps it that it has 250 rounds per gun, meaning that you are almost never going to run out of ammo with this thing unless you are absolutely spraying it like a madman. Not to mention, I've only ran out of ammo with this aircraft I think now twice in my entire playthrough with this thing, and keep in mind it is ace at this point. So it's a really good aircraft when it comes to armament and it comes to durability in a fight, because this thing absolutely dishes out damage and actually can take it pretty well as well. It's fairly durable when compared to Zeros and KI-43s. So all in all, I'd say this was a very good aircraft for a 3.0 battle rating, and maybe even a little too good. One other thing I didn't mention about this aircraft is that it is actually quite weighty to fly, if compared to KI-43s, 61s and Zeros. And that's because, well, it actually is heavier than all those aircraft. But this does come at a good advantage, as although it does make it a bit slower on average, it does make it a lot better at retaining energy, and indeed, this is a very good aircraft at retaining energy, a sort of Mustang or P-47 of the Japanese line, if you will. Very good at maintaining energy, and dive performance isn't bad either. It can dive quite well, and I've actually been capable of keeping up a dive with aircraft like Spitfires and even some P-51s with this sort of aircraft, which is impressive if you ask me, considering most Japanese aircraft, when it comes to diving performance, is, well, ineffectual at best, really. So, earlier on I said a 3.0 battle rating was a bit generous for this aircraft, and, well, what do I think the battle rating should be? And, you know, this aircraft isn't amazing, but it definitely is, you know, I don't think it's 3.0, and I especially don't think it should be coming up against 2.0 battle rating aircraft. I think that's a bit unfair. So, I think that this aircraft should come up against maybe a little bit higher rated aircraft on average, as we put it to a 3.5 battle rating. I think this would make it, although perhaps one of the slower aircraft for its battle rating in the Japanese line, I think its durability in a fight and good energy retention will more than make up for it. Not to mention, it should probably change places, as I've already stated. It should really be at the end of the KI-61-2 line, rather than the KI-61-1 line, because, after all, it's just historically accurate, and, well, maybe, although it won't be as good as the 61-2s, it would, you know, have a bit of a downgrade for a bit of an advantage here and there, and I think overall that would probably be the best thing to do for it. And as you can see on the screen, I'm having no trouble keeping up with this, well, what would be aced F4, as it is a premium, and you can see the damage of these shells just rips it apart. This aircraft is quite good for a battle rating 3.0, and I think really a 3.5 battle rating for this wouldn't go amiss. Which brings us on to the question of the night, which is, should you get the KI-100? Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, it's not incredible, and although it is a little bit on the overpowered side, it's not amazingly overpowered, and if you're someone who likes flying Japanese aircraft, but you don't like their lack of durability in fights, as you know, a lot of Japanese aircraft in this game have not very much ammunition, then this will come as a pleasant surprise. And if you are more of a boom and zoom type fighter, and you enjoy having good energy retention over things like turn fighting, then once again this will be a pleasant surprise to anyone like that. And that's all from me for today. So, if you like what you saw, then please make sure to like, comment and subscribe. It's always appreciated. And until next time, I say thank you very much, and I'll see you then. Okay, I've just got to land this non-carrier borne aircraft on that carrier. Shouldn't be too hard, I am an ace after all. He is turning a bit, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. And I am going a little bit too fast. Well, a bit of a quick landing here, just coming nice and gently. There we go, for God's sake! Oh, Japanese engineering, honest to God.